Riddle me this. What does Ball, this weapon, the Irminsul tree, this statue, and the battle pass all have in common? It's one word, HOMA. I know, you're confused. Let me explain. This all started when I realized that I had magically hit the 5,000 subscriber mark. 5,000 subscribers? I gasped. I must do something to celebrate. Something thematic. Something dramatic. Maybe I'll add some puppies in. Or not. I'm running low on fun footage. Oh, I know. I'll come up with 5 mini theories about Inazuma just before it comes out. And so, off I went to watch the videos, and 15 mini theories I did find. But alas, there was something niggling at me. 11 of those 15 theories were all related to the same basic idea. The stone statue in the city and exactly what Ball wants to do with it. So instead of those 15 mini theories, I present to you 5 speculative observations plus 1 theory that ties them all together. Hopefully. Let's begin with the title of Inazuma Act 1, The Immovable God and the Eternal Euthymia. A big thanks to Josepher on Twitter for their analysis on the title, as well as the Conria Discord server for their assistance with some translations. I'll leave links to both in the description box. Eternal Euthymia is a weird phrase to use for a title. In my personal opinion, I think most people won't have any idea what euthymia is, so I figured MiHoYo must have had a good reason for choosing such a weirdly specific word. As it turns out, the original Chinese is actually this, and please don't ask me to pronounce that. It roughly means the destruction of a transient nature, or unattainable severed dreams, or shadow bubble, illusory bubble. It's kind of flexible. Anyway, euthymia, on the other hand, means something like the feeling of peace and tranquility, which is pretty different from the original Chinese. The difference between the two made me question whether or not the intended meaning was supposed to be more like the unending feeling of peace and tranquility obtained through the destruction of your dreams, or the peace that follows the severing of ties. The idea of destroying dreams is a little disturbing, since the visions are manifestations of one's ambitions, dreams, or wishes. And I know the trailer specifically says ambitions, but the original Chinese is a little more flexible, or at least open to interpretation. Even more disturbing was my inability to shake the idea that eternal peace is similar to an eternal rest, or death, and that got me wondering if eternal euthymia is actually supposed to be a reference to something akin to nirvana, the Buddhist ideal of true peace that frees the body from the endless cycle of reincarnation known as samsara. The reason for this thought is that while nirvana can be obtained at any point in life, it marks the end to one's ability to reincarnate back into the world. It leads, in some ways, to a truly peaceful death and an eternal afterlife. So I have to wonder if Ball once believed that samsara's continuous cycle of reincarnation was true eternity. And thus, we have to ask ourselves whether or not Ball believes herself to have obtained some level of enlightenment, or her nirvana, and wishes to share that newfound eternal peace with the people of Inazuma by forcibly seizing their visions and dragging them along with her. This, in a way, is Ball's ambition, her wish, her dream, and to achieve it, she's seizing the ambitions of her entire nation by hunting down their visions and inlaying them upon a statue. A very curious statue. Let's talk about that statue for a bit, but before we do, a huge shout out to Whale Milk for his take on this theory. We'll be referencing a couple of his ideas here, so make sure to check out his video. I'll leave a link below. So it's been pointed out by many people more knowledgeable than me that Ball's statue is likely based on the Japanese myth of KANNON, the thousand-armed, thousand-eyed savior goddess of compassion and mercy. She's one of the most beloved of all Buddhist deities, as she delayed her ascension to nirvana in order to free the people from the bindings of samsara, or reincarnation. But I also have reason to believe that this statue of KANNON, as I'll be calling it from here on out, is also directly referencing an in-game character, and it's not Ball. Upon closer inspection, there are 3 really weird things worth noting about the statue of KANNON. First of all, it looks nothing like Baal, like at all. I found this super weird because before my research, I just assumed that if a god builds a giant statue of a god, it would be in their own image. Especially if said god is trying to supposedly power up said statue using some kind of magic catalyst like visions. Of course, I'm making the assumption that Baal has created this statue in some way because it seems pretty out of place with the wooden platforms all around it and all that. Now, Whale Milk points out in his video that rather than looking like Baal or even Yai, as many have suggested, KANNON actually has a strong resemblance to the Welkin moon. And he's right. Which makes my next point even weirder. KANNON has an eye hanging around her neck. If you haven't seen me freak out over eyes yet, I'll leave a link to that video in the description box, but the TLDR is basically this. Eyes are symbolically linked to Celestia or the heavens. Visions are called God's eyes. The sustainer of heavenly principles has eyes all over her creepy cubes, and the domain mural is covered in eyes. And weirdly enough, the eyes overall have a strong resemblance to the triple goddess symbol if you squint just a little and turn sideways. 3 goddesses, 3 moons, and 1 symbol to connect them all. But I digress. The eye is important because the symbol that Baal is holding in her statue of 7 is a ring with 8 dots around it, not this eye-like symbol. This statue therefore has no direct connection to Baal herself, or Yai for that matter, since Yai's symbol is that of the transient sakura blossom. So the third thing to note about this statue is its wing things. While there are many odd things about these wings, like the fact they're covered in eyes, or the fact they seem to sprout off the lower back rather than the shoulders, the most important thing about these wings are actually their shape, because the shape of these things match both the Staff of HOMA as well as the icon for the Battle Pass. Since its release, the Staff of HOMA has bugged the crap out of me, solely because it looked so much like the Battle Pass icon, but seemingly had no other connection to it. The lore just talks of the spears being a firewood staff used in burning rituals to cleanse evil, which on the surface seems kinda boring. But in my research, this brought up 2 really intriguing lines of thought. First, the word HOMA. HOMA is actually a word used for 2 things: a type of ritual by which one makes sacrificial offerings to the gods by burning said offerings, and a mythical creature known as a HOMA bird. The HOMA bird is pretty close mythologically to a phoenix or a fenghuang. It never lands and it spends its entire life flying in the sky whilst every few years bursting into flames and regenerating itself from the ashes. The second line of thought, the use of the phrase firewood staff. Oddly enough, a firewood staff isn't a real thing, at least as far as I can tell, but for some reason looking into it led me to discover that many ritual wooden staffs historically were made of ash. The tree, not like ashes, just to be clear. Ash tree, ashwood tree. Anyway. This seemingly insignificant detail is actually massive because the most famous ash tree in all of mythology is Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse mythology. That means the Staff of HOMA is a staff used in HOMA rituals that is made of the wood of the holiest of all trees and is carved in the shape of the wings of the HOMA bird, which soars exclusively in heaven. Now, if you weren't aware, Teyvat actually does have a world tree, like Yggdrasil. The branches, or saplings of which, are known as the Irminsul trees, which circulate the ley lines that cover the entire world. If you want to learn more about the Irminsul and the ley lines, check out my video on the false sky, because that's as much as I'm saying for the context of this video. Anyway, the theorists in the Genshin community have long likened the Irminsul to the Norse Yggdrasil tree. But the connection might be deeper than initially anticipated, at least as far as I'm concerned. See, Yggdrasil is usually described as having the following characteristics: an unnamed eagle living within its branches, the dragon Nithhogg gnawing away at its roots, and the 3 maidens living within the tree, controlling time, laws, and the fate of man, all from their home in one of the 3 great wells. Well, Genshin now has a reference to the great heavenly bird, 3 moon sister goddesses older than any other living being in Teyvat, and finally a very prominent tale of a serpent lying within what we can only assume is the abyss, where the roots of the world tree probably are, we think, probably. Now, I know you're all wondering where the heck I'm pulling the serpent reference from, and you'll be happy to know that it's from a story you've probably all seen a dozen times by now. It's the Battle Pass. The Battle Pass cutscene tells the story of a kingdom in the heavens, wherein a crowned heir must seek out a sacred treasure known as the Genesis Pearl. But the pearl is guarded by a serpent, and the heir fails to retrieve the pearl and succumbs to the darkness, which we assume is the abyss. Hence, my claim that there's a serpent within the abyss. Assuming that the world tree extends to both the heaven and the abyss, the portrayal of Yggdrasil and the story of Genshin's Irminsul start to line up perfectly. Okay, let's review what we've learned. The HOMA bird is a bird that lives in the heavens and is somewhat like a phoenix. The symbol of the staff of HOMA and the battle pass are likely both referencing the wings of the HOMA bird. KANNON has the wings of a HOMA bird and therefore must be a being of heaven. The staff of HOMA is also a firewood staff, which were typically made of ash, which is also the same type of tree as the world tree Yggdrasil. The battle pass puts a heavy emphasis on a serpent or a snake guarding a treasure. There's a serpent-like dragon that coils around the roots of Yggdrasil. There are 3 goddesses that rule over law, time, and the fates of man. And there are 3 moons said to be older than any other being in Teyvat. From this, I've drawn the following 3 conclusions. First, HOMA is likely a term used to talk about the heavens, or maybe Celestia. A ritual of HOMA would likely be a ritual of sacrifice made in heaven's name or to the heavens. Second, KANNON is likely the Welkin moon, which resided in heaven. Incidentally, Aria, Sonnet, and KANNON with a C were the names of the moon's sisters in Genshin. It's really coincidental. Third, the serpent likely represents the abyss, slowly gnawing away at the roots of the world. But what, you may ask, does all of this have to do with Baal? Well, I believe, as many other theorists do, that Baal is effectively playing the role of a deity known as Akkala, also known as the immovable wisdom king. He's described as holding the sword of wisdom, with braided hair hanging on his left shoulder, one eye lightly squinting, and blazing flames radiating from his awe-inspiring body. He burns away all impediments to enlightenment, and when gods like Shiva and Vishnu are described as wicked for trapping humanity into endless cycles of rebirth, or samsara, Akkala strikes fear into them because he has the ability to bind them. And within his temples, priests performed HOMA rituals as a method of purification. And if we're right about the Akkala parallel, then Baal may be trying to use visions to purify the corrupted moon we see within the trailer, so as to call upon its power. She may no longer believe in the endless cycle of death and rebirth within Teyvat, not seeing it as her ideal, unchanging eternity. She may want to seek an eternity that exists beyond the firmament, to freeze her own existence in time. And if the moons of Teyvat are anything like the Norns of Norse mythology, then they too may have the power over law, time, and fate, all 3 of which Baal may need to create her own nirvana, even at the cost of the dreams of the people of Inazuma. But this is all just speculation. I have a ridiculous amount of thoughts about Inazuma going forward and only about 5 minutes of actual teased lore to work with. But I think this is as good a theory as any, all things considered. So what about you guys? What are your thoughts on the Inazuma story? Do you think Ball is a real villain, or is she just playing a part? Is that really the Crimson Moon, or just some horrible, horrible nightmare? I'd love to hear from you guys as we get ready to dive right into the first massive region in Genshin Impact version 2. And you know what? Thanks to all of my subscribers, I cannot believe we've already hit 5,000 of you. You guys are absolutely the best, and I cannot wait to see you all in Inazuma. Until then, take care.